Generally, greenery is a sign of a healthy and prosperous environment. But this image right here is not taken from any tropical region or any grassland region. This image has been taken from an island situated on the Antarctic Peninsula. Antarctica, yes, Antarctica, which is known as the White Continent. You might not even imagine in your wildest dreams that such an extensive mass of vegetation would exist somewhere even remotely close to a cold desert such as Antarctica. But this is what is happening. Obviously, we know climate change, global warming are the culprits behind it. And although we'll also discuss some part of vegetation like mosses and lichen. You might have heard of these names. So there is an ecosystem. It is a cold desert, but there is a biodiversity. There is an ecosystem associated with this cold desert like continent. So even if someday trees start growing, someday vascular plants start growing, it does not mean that it is a harbinger of good times to come. No. A desert is in place is made due to a reason. There is a biodiversity, there is fauna and flora, there are penguins associated. They cannot thrive in a tropical region. The ice, and we're not just talking about sea level rise. Normally, when the ice is melting, or we talk about the Arctic or the Antarctic region, we talk about or consider is the sea level rise. But this is supposed to be much more than that. So, in today's session, the agenda of discussion would be what exactly is happening, what is the status, then what are the reasons behind this unimaginable greening of Antarctica, then what is the probable or the already happening impact of the phenomena. But first and foremost, we are going to discuss the geography of Antarctica. It is going to be the most interesting part. And believe me, some of you might be acquainted with the geography of Antarctica or not. I have to wonder because it is not entirely a straight strip of land as we are known to mark out in the outline map of the world. So if I draw, so this is what Antarctica actually looks like. Don't believe me? So I have a solution for that also. So this is Google Earth. So Antarctica, this is Antarctica which I was telling you about. So you can see, although not exact, but this is Antarctica. So the interesting portions you can see, this is the tip. This is the tip. This is the continent of South America. Okay, then we have the Atlantic Ocean here. We have European continent here. Then we have Africa. Then we have Indian Ocean. Here we have Australia. Now you have to visualize from the point of view of the South Pole. Don't worry, I'll mark out the important oceans. And here you can see New Zealand. This is the Pacific Ocean. So it is sort of interesting to note. So the important thing now, there are some terms which we need to understand first. So out of those, two terms are there. One is the ice shelf and one is glacier. So, what are these? Because normally, when you read the news, we normally skip the climate oriented news unless and until we are very interested in it. We normally hear the names of ice shelves being affected, not the glaciers. Okay. So what is a glacier? Just to revise, it is a large perennial accumulation of crystalline ice, snow, rocks, sediment, which gently flows under influence of its own weight and the effect of gravity. Fine. So this is the appropriate definition of glacier. Fine. Then I talked about this term, ice shelf. It is a mass of ice attached to land and fed by the tongues of glaciers extending into sheltered waters. So both of these are different. And iceberg is a detached portion of an ice sheet or a glacier which floats on the sea. So right now this ice shelf and this ice glacier will be most important when discussing this. So here, if I start marking, first of all, I'll write down the important keys. So here we know that here is the tip of South America. Fine. Then here we have the Atlantic Ocean. Okay. Then here we have Africa. Then here we have the Indian Ocean. Here we have Australia, New Zealand, and finally Pacific Ocean. One thing, if you have not been acquainted till now, that normally during the school days we used to say that just like Arctic Ocean, the region surrounding Antarctic, the continent of Antarctica is known as Antarctic Ocean. No, it is actually known as Southern Ocean. Fine. So you should just keep this in mind in case you come across these terms in the newspaper. Fine. Now, the most important. So, this, the major part, the major concentration or the focus of today's discussion will be this part. This is the Antarctic Peninsula, which in which there is a group of islands near Antarctica. So one of these is the Ardley Islands. This Ardley Island, the picture which I showed you in the beginning, the initial picture that is taken from Ardley Island, and there has been research done on one of these another islands, the Robert Island, whose data facts I will share with you. They're also interesting. So first of all, we'll be talking about the ice shelves. Okay. So only the important ice shelves I'll be marking, which are often in the news. Fine. So I'll just label it one, two, three, four. So this one corresponds to the Larsen ice shelf. You might have heard often in the news that ice loss, massive ice loss, or it is breaking. Then two is the Ron ice shelf, not glacier. This is the ice shelf. Then this three is the Ross ice shelf also, and this is the Amery ice shelf. Okay. Then if we talk about the glaciers, so here we have a very important glacier. So again here the one is the Pine Island Glacier, and the second often in the news is the Thwaites Glacier. So this is also very important, often in the news. So you are not surprised, should not be surprised. Fine. Then some seas surrounding this. We have talked the major seas. So this is known as Weddell Sea. This is known as, I'll just mark it with a star. So this star portion is the Bellingshausen Sea. Fine. Then this is here. This is the Ross Sea. This is the Amundsen Sea. Roald Amundsen was the first person to reach the South Pole. Fine. And this we know we have already discussed. So these are the important seas. And this portion here we have the South Pole. Okay. South Pole. And here we have Dakshin Gangotri, which is India's research station situated in the Antarctic. There are two research stations of India situated at the Arctic also, the Bharti and Maitri. Dakshin Gangotri is the, so this is the structure. What? So basically we are concerned with the Antarctic Peninsula. Okay. So we know greenhouse effect and also some data now we are going to discuss what exactly is happening. So according to data, first, overall, the entire continent of Antarctica has lost more than 280% ice mass in the decades of 2000 to 2010 compared to 1980s to 1990s. Fine. Then the Antarctic continent on a whole is heating at a rate of 0.22 to 0.32 degrees Celsius per decade, which is almost twice the global decadal rate of increase of temperature, 0.14 to 0.18. Can anyone tell me the difference? I'll discuss. Okay, when we'll go again. Then, and apart from that, the peninsula Already the entire Antarctic continent is heating at a rate almost more than double. This is the world average, and this is the average of the rate of increase of temperature on Antarctica. And the Antarctic Peninsula is heating at around five times this global average. And moreover, since 1950s, the Antarctic Peninsula has heated by over 3 degrees Celsius, which means a lot. Fine. Then we had discussed that this study had been conducted by the scientists on the Robert Island of Antarctica near the Antarctic Peninsula. So, there it has been established that the rate of increase of vegetation, what is happening is that warming is increasing due to greenhouse gases effect, climate change. Due to warming, there is more moisture, the atmosphere is wetter. This is leading to an increase in vegetation. So, this is the main cause. So, mosses and lichens, which are the primary forms of vegetation in continents or cold areas like Antarctica, they were already there, but they have increased several fold. For example, in Robert Island itself, the rate of increase of vegetation has increased from 18.7% from 2013 to 2016 to this is the rate 30% from 2016 to 2021. Now we had already talked about the Antarctic Peninsula. Fine. This region, another fact, this region is approximately 5 lakh square kilometers. Okay. Initially, the vegetation cover was 1 square kilometer. Now it has increased drastically to around 12 square kilometer. Compared to this, you might say it is very less, but we are talking about the rate of increase. The rate is quickening. Okay, so these stats should give you a clearer picture. Moreover, it has been observed that frequent heat wave like conditions have been observed in Antarctica and winter temperatures have been observed. So, winter months in the southern hemisphere they will occur peak of the winter months in around June, July. Fine. So in June, July, if you remember geography 6th class, so in July we have summers in the northern hemisphere and winters. So in winters itself, it has been observed that the ground temperatures of the Antarctic Peninsula, they have been observed to be 10 degrees Celsius to 28 degrees Celsius above normal. So this is very disturbing. Fine. So this is what is happening. Now why it is happening? So we'll discuss some of the reasons. Now a lot of this is not given in the newspapers also, so I did some additional work. Now first of all, this is an elevation map, a topographical map of Antarctica. So we are normally talking about this region. Okay, so if we start writing down the reasons that why it is happening, so first we can write about the global warming, climate change. There is no need for me, I think, to elaborate upon this. Fine. Then you might have heard about albedo effect. Now, what is this? Albedo is the portion, albedo of any surface is the portion of sunlight that is reflected from the surface of that object. Fine. So we know that of all the materials on the earth, ice has the maximum albedo. It reflects almost all the sunlight back into space. So it does not absorb it. Okay. But now what is happening? Not only that global warming, that greenhouse gases, those are common warming factors for all the places all over the earth. But this albedo effect, like I'm standing in a place like Delhi, the albedo effect is not much. We have concrete buildings, asphalt roads. So the albedo effect is very less. A lot of sunlight is getting absorbed. But here, when the ice is melting, the darker surface, the darker surface is getting revealed from the ice. So obviously, it has much less albedo effect as compared to its erstwhile ice, which was covering it. So now it is absorbing more heat. So that is why the rate of all this Antarctic continent and even the Arctic region where the ice is melting is much more than the global average. This is a very important point to note. And fine, furthermore, we had discussed that this albedo, this rate of warming in the peninsula is the highest, even greater as compared to this major Antarctic continent. Why is that? Because you can see that this region, this green, yellow, and red region, these show the regions which are above sea level. Fine. But this peninsula majority part, significant part, is in contact or is in touch with the sea. Now, not only the atmosphere, but the hydrosphere, the sea or the ocean, it is also absorbing the excess quantity of heat. In fact, almost since the industrialization age, 90% of the heat which has increased or entered into the atmosphere or has been trapped by the greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and methane, they are 90% of it has been absorbed by the oceans. So this ice part, this surrounding the peninsula, it is in contact with the sea and sea is getting warmer. So further global warming, albedo effect, and darker continent and the sea warming. So that is causing additional not only ice loss but also additional drastic range increase in temperature of this region. Okay. Okay, so this is the primary vegetation of, so this is lichen and this is moss. Fine. So some interesting things. So now implications of all this climate change, especially Antarctica. So first we have to discuss, we already know ice melting, sea level rise. Okay, very common. So just look out for the names of the places which we have discussed, like Larsen Ice Shelf, Thwaites Glacier, Amundsen Sea. Okay, then Ross Ice Shelf. These will be always again in the news time and again. Fine. Then the rapid vegetation growth, the topic which we started, especially the rate. So you can see via these images, the first image which we talked about, that this Ardley Island, these mosses have started colonizing. They have been increased at a drastic rate to colonize all the rock parts, rocky parts, the land parts of the continent. So this is one of the, okay, so vegetation growth is there. So vegetation growth is there right now. If you know just a little bit of knowledge about what is lichen and what is moss. So lichen is actually not a plant. It is a symbiotic relationship between algae and fungi. So this is symbiotic organism showcasing a symbiotic relationship. How? So algae, we know it can undergo photosynthesis. So it provides food by utilizing nutrients, sunlight, all, and it provides food for itself and the fungi. Fungi in it, on the other hand, it protects the algae from drying out. Okay, it protects because algae we see if it is accumulating. So if a lot of sunlight is there, so algae, if wetter conditions and damp conditions are not there, the algae will cease to form. So it provides it shades and sometimes also nutrients and organic matter. And as more the weather around in and around our Antarctica is getting warmer, moist, so it is giving impetus to this lichen to grow. Then the second type of primary part which we discussed was the moss. So moss is a simple type of plant which undergoes photosynthesis. Normally, as you can see from the picture, these mosses and lichens, they cannot grow much to the top because the soil quality is poor. The soil quality is poor and rainfall is less, so nutrients which are required to grow tall and sustain the trees and other vascular plants, that is not there. But now what is happening is more the algae, more the more lichens, more moss, what they will do when the plants die or shed, so they will decompose, they will enter the frozen soil, they will add organic matter, they will add nutrients. So it will lead to the formation of advanced types of plants like vascular plants which have specific vessels like xylem and phloem for transporting of nutrients like water and food. So that is again more different types of vegetation will start growing. So that is also there. Fine. Then again, there is also a threat of invasive species. So, what are invasive species? Particularly those species which are not endemic or native to that particular area. Mosses and lichens are native to the desert like continent of Antarctica, but then again, a conflagration or excess vegetation of this is not. And moreover, when this advanced vascular plants start growing, then they will also be invasive. Moreover, the ecotourists, the scientists, they can also bring about conditions or particles which can facilitate the growth of invasive species. So they will also harm the overall biodiversity. Fine. So this sea level rise, vegetation growth, invasive growth, and we know that all of these components are connected with one another. If something is happening in Antarctica, its effect will be shown all over the earth. Now, what is happening again? So again, warming. Now, one reason here we have discussed the reasons for warming. Another reason which we can discuss for warming is the weakening of the polar vortex. This I felt like discussing it is important, but I will not discuss. Basically, polar vortex is a system of low pressure which surrounds or moves in the stratospheric region around the poles. So it is also responsible for cooling the Antarctic continent. So it when it becomes weak, So less of cold is transferred to the Antarctic continent. Fine. Now we were discussing about the implications. So we had discussed this implication: sea level rise, ecosystem distortion. One important aspects, just you can, the ocean currents which will be drastically affected. This might seem as a complex topic, this subheading, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible. So you might have heard of thermohaline circulation. So what is this thermohaline circulation? Basically, what happens is, if we take the example of Antarctica, so I'm going to draw a cross-sectional diagram here. So this is sea. Let this be the Antarctic region, and this be the tropical region. Fine. So there are water currents, not only this is below the ocean level and this is above the. So there are water currents above the ocean, but majority of the water currents, the flow of the water currents, it is 90% is below the ocean surface. So what is happening is that here in tropical regions, the water is warm and salty. Here it is cold and fresh water is there. So what happens is the movement of the ocean currents takes place like this. The warm water, it moves towards from the tropical region to the cold Antarctic region. Then the warm saline water, it cools. Okay, the ice, already there is ice here. Icebergs are there, ice is there. So that warm saline water cools and it becomes even more dense as compared to the fresh water surrounding this area. It sinks, it moves underground or under the ocean towards the tropical region, and it moves in this way. So this cycle is very important, not only because it acts like a conveyor belt to transfer and balance the heat content all over the globe. But this movement, because there is a flow, it is also a source of movement and supply of nutrients which otherwise would not have been available for the aquatic life to survive and subsequently for the humans to survive. Now, if Antarctic starts warming, what will happen is that this ice will start melting. It is the cold water, the fresh water will be there. So this warm water which is reaching there, it will not get cooled to such and with such an intensity as to sink down and then facilitate this conveyor belt. This conveyor belt will stop or become less in strength. So this will then be harmful for the environment all over and affect not only the biodiversity but the environmental heat balance. Why do the poles don't get colder? Why do the tropical areas don't get hotter than normal? This is because of the conveyor belts like this. So this is the what is happening, and of course way forward we have to take measures and do this and do that, but this concept needed to be studied. It's an interesting concept, although in the long run if we don't take any measures this is going to get worse. So I hope you gained a lot of perspective to this lecture. So till we meet again next time, Jai Hind.